what is climate change? I mean, I think the question that the young lady asked over here is very valid. Young people are highly intelligent. They have many platforms from which they can derive their information and their knowledge. But I wonder whether they're being told, or which they're entitled to, all the facts in relation to this.
Oh my
when I asked... Well, just a moment, Alice, you've been speaking for most of the night. When I asked Tanya Plibersek...
We'll fact-check that one for you.
Yes.
When I asked Tanya Plibersek, was the Deputy Leader of the Labor Party and the potential Deputy Prime Minister, was carbon dioxide the big issue in relation to climate change? And she said yes. I then said, well, that being the case, what percentage of the atmosphere is made up of carbon dioxide? And she said, I don't know. And I said, hang on, you don't know what percentage of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide, and yet you're prepared to stand the economy on its head to address a problem, the detail of which you don't know. So when I then explained that the percentage of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, Alice, is how much? Alice, how much of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere?
To answer
Alice?
the question, Scott Morrison has said he believes in climate change and that he wants to do something about it.
Alice, how much carbon dioxide is the problem? How much carbon dioxide is there in the atmosphere?
I'm not a scientist.
Too much.
I don't know. I'm a
Well, hang on. If you're going to argue the case, you ought to know. It's 0.04%. And of that 0.04%, human beings around the world create 3%. And of that 3%, Australia creates 1.3%. So for the 1.3% of 3% of 0.04%, we then decide to have a national economic suicide note.
Alan, I'm happy for you to have made that point, which you've made many times on radio, but it has to be answered by others, and particularly by scientists in the long term.
Well,
let's go to the thing on festival. Go ahead.
They're maths, not
to
science.
answer your question about youth, in Queensland, youth unemployment is 25%. So I can understand why they would consider their own survival above climate. But I think if we actually dealt with the employment issue with Queensland, they would also care about climate. Business cares about climate. We heard the Reserve Banks talked about it, the World Banks talked about it. We look at capital flows to fossil fuels around the world is in decline. It's in long-term decline. Pension funds around the world, the second largest global pension fund around the world has announced that they are going to divest of fossil fuels. Why? Because we know that eventually, at some point in time, and we need to transition and make sure it's sensible and make sure that people have jobs in that process,